to share it when now.
Got
And I'll be here doing the intro to the show. Facebook, hi. Look who we have on this big screen today. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there he is. This is Comic Spot, you guys. And today we have Mudit Verma out of the New York area, comedian. I'll do his full intro in a minute. But right now I got to give a nod to my sponsor. These Comic Spot interviews were started so my stalkers, friends and family, could get to know other comedians, bookers, agents in the comedy entertainment world. So you get another chance to meet another bright star in the comedy world today by meeting Mudit Verma. And like I said, I'll do his intro in a second. But right now, I got to stop and thank two big companies that are behind me. Not literally. They just back what I'm doing. I've got the veteransofcomedy.com, and Wounded Warriors is starting to take notice what I'm doing. So got some real clout going behind me. Share these videos with any military and veterans that you know, because that's who we're trying to heal, or anybody who's hurting. First responders are having a hard time. Nurses, you name it. It's been a rough time lately. So let's share the videos and get to know some comedians, laugh a little along the way of an interview. So today's guest, sitting over there so patiently in the other square, is Mudit Verma. And I'm going to read you the intro. I always ask for a braggy introduction, and I'm stalling because I put it somewhere and can't find it. Have you ever put anything somewhere and couldn't find it? You can
all the
time. So the intro I got from Mudit Verma is as follows. Mudit Verma is a New York City Desi American comedian. Pacific Islander is what it means. Comedian originally from the Maryland, D.C. area. Mudit recently completed a residency with the Industry Room of Broadway Comedy Club. Shout out to Al Martin and Broadway Comedy Club for picking him. Woo! This past July that happened, and he has also performed at the Gotham Comedy Club, Greenwich Village Comedy Club, the Stand Up New York, and Stand Up New York. Great comedy clubs. Mudit recently performed at the Burbank Comedy Festival and will be performing at the 4th Annual Comedy Mob Festival at Stand Up New York on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Mudit's material pertains to his Indian, Hindu upbringing and his life choices. Ultimately, Mudit strives to put on high-quality shows for diverse audiences to thoroughly enjoy. So let's get to know him. What do you say? Let's welcome to the stage here on Comic Spot, Mudit Verma. Woo!
Thank you. So happy to be here, Linda.
Thank you so much for taking time to come here. Let's get to know you a little bit. I kind of ask everybody the same questions unless you say something and then we go down a different path. So talk to me about being in New York, before we go into your life, growing up, now, in the future. Let's talk about Mudit Verma, your friends and family through the pandemic in the New York area. Can you fill us in what that was like for you?
Absolutely. So I moved to New York in June of this year, and this was after I sort of got vaccinated and I left home in Maryland. And I was very fortunate that my best friend from high school, he's a resident doctor here in New York, and he has a housing system that is very affordable, and he happened to have like an empty room. So I was very fortunate to have my timeline kind of come together. I knew I wanted to move here at some point, or at least visit New York in my stand-up career. And it thankfully happened at just the right time in June. And I've been just hammering away at all the open mics, all the shows, all the spots that I can get. And it's been awesome.
That's so great. Let's go way back in time and get a DeLorean and a time machine and go back. Us old people like to do that. Let's be nostalgic.
Okay.
What were you like growing up in your family? What was your role? Funny, quiet? What were you?
Yeah, so I had a couple of different reputations. I was an only child, and my parents liked to kind of portray me as this quiet kid. And I was a quiet kid in pretty much every uh, formal setting or educational setting that my parents would be present at. But I think as I grew older and into middle school, I guess I lost patience in sort of putting up that image, and I would act like rowdy here and there. But it would be this situation where some folks thought I was a very quiet kid, and other folks thought I was very rowdy. And so I think grappling with those two sides of my personality has been quite a journey, and that's sort of who I was growing up. I was a funny kid in grade school. I wasn't the funny kid, I wasn't quite in the top, I don't know, 5 funny kids in class, but I was a funny kid. I had potential. So like I think I was inspired to learn the actual process and the nitty gritty of comedy and how humor works. So that's sort of what I was like growing up.
And so growing up in the DC area, you said, right?
Yeah.
What was it like for you to find people you could identify who did comedy, or who did you look up to as a young, you know, Pacific Islander American?
Mhm.
Who did you have to look up
Right.
to?
Yeah, I remember when I was in 8th grade, the summer between 8th grade and 9th grade. I remember that was the summer that YouTube like came out as a website. And the first YouTube video I ever watched was of a comedian named Russell Peters. He's an Indian comic from Canada. I'm sure many of us know who he is. And so he was sort of like not only the first comedy icon in my life, but really any level of mainstream, or at that time kind of internet like pop culture icon for sort of the Indian community. So the impact that Russell Peters had as I was entering high school was profound. And I only began stand-up comedy 2 years ago in August of 2019. And the comedian, so I have a friend that I've known for about 10 years. He went to the same college as I did, which is University of Maryland. And his name is Camilo Diaz. And he's been doing comedy for, I think, 4 years now. And so we were friends before he started stand-up comedy. He was doing stand-up sort of in secret. He wasn't telling us friends that he was doing it for like 8 months or so until he got really good and hosted his own open mics, hosted his own shows, and invited us out. And so our mutual friends kind of singled me out and said, "Hey, Mudit, you should give this a try." And it, over like a couple of years of nagging and kind of friendly dares, I finally gave my first open mic a shot in August of 2019 in Germantown, Maryland, and that's sort of the origin of my comedy journey.
Wow, Mudit, what was it like to do it for the first time after letting the dares go by? Then you decided to get up on stage. How
Right.
nervous were you, and how did it go?
Yeah, I was very nervous. I was very, very nervous. And I think that the few things that helped me get through my first open mic was, first of all, the fact that the host of the open mic was an old friend of mine, good friend of mine, someone I knew before he even started stand-up. So having the other side on my side was very helpful. That the last sort of instance where I ran into this old friend was at a wedding. And it was at that wedding where sort of the final nagging and the last dare was like, "Hey, we've been bothering you for a couple of years. When are you going to give your first open mic a shot?" And I was like, "You know what? I'm at a wedding. I've gotta follow through on my promise." So a week or two later after that friend's wedding, it was awesome because the couple that got married, they took a few days after the wedding to kind of breathe before they went on their honeymoon. right? To just kind of chill out at home, to recharge for their honeymoon. And it was at that time, that window of opportunity, they were also able to make it to my first open mic. So them, as well as a few of our other friends. In retrospect, I think it was very fortunate that I had a support system at my very first open mic. That's not very common, I think, for comedians starting out. Most of the comedians I met, they kind of did not know anyone at their first open mic. It must have been very scary for them. So for me, I'm very thankful that I had that support in place, and that support sort of led to all of the logistics to have me really dive deeply into the comedy scene here. So yeah.
Fabulous. So did you take any courses, or did friends just help you, or how have you developed your comedy since you started?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first 6 or 7 months of stand-up, I essentially hammered away at the open mics in Maryland, DC, and Virginia. I was essentially just doing a trial and error, getting my feet comfortable on stage. And this is before the lockdown started in March of 2020. And so I would talk to my friend Camilo Diaz. I would talk to other comics starting out. Then eventually, the lockdown hit, and I think the first sort of course or workshop that I took that was comedy related was with Flappers Comedy Club online, because Flappers was probably the most active comedy club in the Zoom scene. So I took a handful of workshops with them. I took a comedy writing workshop, a freelance writing workshop, a joke. Sort of a joke punching up workshop, sort of working on feedback on our jokes. So Flappers had a great sort of infrastructure and menu of resources, and so I was very much able to take advantage of that throughout the pandemic. I was able to visit Flappers in real life this past August at the Burbank Comedy Festival, and there were courses at the Burbank Comedy Festival in the club. And so I took every single course that was offered. I learned about acting and sort of the union versus non-union, which is all brand new to me, and sort of how comedians can get in the acting space. So it was very helpful to learn from that perspective. And Flappers was probably the biggest sort of entity that's involved in my growth of comedy in terms of taking courses and whatnot. And beyond that, I like to look at other comedians' sort of YouTube channels and their tips and tricks on their social media. I try to stay in touch with what's out there, and I'm always open to learn more. So.
Fabulous. You're fun to interview. I'm curious, when you're doing comedy, how do you walk into a room where other comics, before you go on stage or doing comedy, what do you do to adjust what you're going to say on stage? Do you read the room and adjust your material, or do you just do what you do?
Right. Yeah, I try to read the room the best that I can. And sometimes it can be tricky because I only have so many bits, and you can't please everybody. So I try to read the room, and I think the order of my bits tends to stay somewhat consistent, especially because my first couple bits usually relate to my name and sort of introducing myself in a comedic way for a couple of minutes, to the audience. And so the bits about my name tend to be universally accepted because it's about me. And then I kind of curate the remaining bits to how the room will respond to them the best. And I also try to, I think recently I kind of, if I realize a bit maybe is I try to be present in the room. Like if something doesn't land as smoothly as I'd like, then I'll acknowledge it and have some fun with it, and kind of engage with the audience and go from there. So I'm definitely getting a lot more comfortable on stage and sort of curating my bits for my larger set in real time by getting to know the folks watching me and listening. So yeah, I try to be present and current and kind of fresh to the best that I can.
That's great. You actually performed on some of the best stages in New York City. And it's no little task to get into the Burbank Comedy Festival. So kudos to you for all that you've accomplished.
Thanks.
August 2019 till now, right?
Yes.
That's fabulous. So, what is something that you have learned in those couple of years that you did not have nobody warned you? And you just like, wow, I can't believe this is part of comedy. Do you have something that took you by surprise?
Sure. There's, I think, a handful of things that took me by surprise. I think that the first few months, those 6 or 7 months while I was in Maryland, I was living with my folks. I was actually in between day jobs at that time. So I was doing several volunteer ventures and sort of the community, and I think like hitting the open mics was a part of that. And I realized that the amount of time and energy it takes to really finesse and polish jokes and getting comfortable on stage, like that takes just as much effort, if not more, as a full-time job. And I think that it was a challenge kind of convincing some of my family and friends that I'm making use of this time, and I found something I'm passionate about. But the fact of the matter is, I'm going to need some time where I'm not making sort of a full-time day job's worth of money. And so I think really coming to terms with that struggle in real life, like experiencing it firsthand, is just so different than maybe years prior, where I'd watch maybe a movie, an inspirational movie about an artist or someone that's following their dreams and chasing after it. But there are things that get in the way. So I think that experiencing that firsthand was very eye-opening. Growing up, I tended to essentially do what my parents told me to do. My college major and my graduate degree in pharmacy, my family sort of was a big factor in that, and sort of my culture is very it's sort of, we don't tend to question sort of our seniors, and we tend to obey, and so I think comedy helped me learn to get to know myself and know what I'm about, and living that was like, it affected my sleep even, like just sort of having that congruence, and finally having it take like 25 plus years to get there, and to have this kind of headspace where things are much more aligned and clear. I think learning to deal with that, but then also learning to manage the day to day, because I did finally, like, now I have a day job to pay rent in New York. So managing like kind of the big picture, sort of inspirational hype and energy, but managing that with the day to day, like doing chores and paying the bills and doing laundry, like that sort of full-fledged adulthood is something that I've only recently started to learn and experience. So.
I get it. That's awesome. So, what would you say is like the best or the worst, scariest, stupid, hard, weird, hard, stupid, scariest thing you ever saw happen since you've been doing comedy?
Okay. I think that scary. I'll start with scary, but this is not a bad scary. It's a good scary, but scary nonetheless. So there's this open mic that I do here in New York, that's on Friday nights at 8:30, and they call it a heckle mic, where you get on stage and you don't really do material, but it's sort of a simulation. The audience and the comics waiting to go up, they essentially heckle you, and it's not very structured. They just kind of shout at you, roast you, insult you, and the idea is that you respond back. You attempt to roast them back, and it's to simulate that if you get heckled out in the real world, you'll have that muscle built. And the thing with this particular mic with these heckles, like I've done something similar in DC, where the host is given sort of that permission to interject during your set here and there with maybe a riff or a little jab. But this particular heckle mic that I do in New York, it's really just this visceral, like everyone's shouting at you. It has a little bit of structure, but the gist of it is you've got to really be on your toes and maybe learn how to quickly heckle back, roast back, reply, respond, stay composed. So this is a sort of a type of exercise or open mic that I've only been trying or doing for a month now, and it's been very invigorating. It's sort of really put me to the test to think on my feet in a stressful situation on stage. I'll say, thankfully, I haven't been in too many scary situations at sort of a regular open mic or a regular show. I think that, no, at least nothing that really sticks out compared to what we already kind of hear about or know about. But I think this experience I just shared, it's scary, but it's sort of positive. It simulates, it works to simulate kind of the scarier parts out there. So yeah.
That's awesome. I would like to be a part of something like that myself. I know there's one of those on Zoom that I can go to where everybody can shout stuff out, but rarely do they. And they're kind of lame with their heckling. And it sounds like the one you go to, they just go for the gusto.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. That is a good practice to have. So you've done comedy in New York City. There's always a lot of celebrities out walking in New York City. So you're around comedy clubs. Who all have you bumped into in your comedy career?
Ooh, I think that I haven't quite bumped into a huge name. I think that I definitely feel slightly starstruck in certain spaces or mics or even shows where if I'm on the same lineup as certain comedians with very high level credits, I do think I'm still kind of waiting on the moment to really run into a name that is sort of big enough. One kind of litmus test that I use is if my parents recognize the name, then I sort of know that whoever has a level of fame or prestige that's quite universal. So I'm sort of waiting for that moment a little bit, but I'm definitely thankful to be plugged into a network of like really awesome comedians that have these credits that that are really impressive and hopefully that I can achieve as well down the road.
Gotcha. It is very like intimidating when you're getting ready to go on stage and they say tonight's headliner has been on this TV show and Comedy Central has a Netflix, and you're like, oh, they could be hearing me. It's intimidating with all those credits. So I get what you're saying. You went to the comedy festival in Burbank, and I know that Jay Leno was there. So did you get to bump elbows with him in California?
Yeah, so I would say in California, yeah, Jay Leno, he was in the same building. I mean, it was really cool to sort of be in that same space. And what was kind of cool was that so Jay Leno headlined the opening show for the festival, like the start, like the grand opening show the Sunday night, and the showcase that I was on was directly after that. So that felt pretty cool. So there were a few fleeting moments where for a few seconds I was in the same sort of green room or backstage kind of kitchen area as Jay Leno was. So that was super awesome to kind of really see him in real life, and hopefully down the road, when I come back to Burbank, meet him. But I think that would be actually the kind of the closest sort of big celebrity name run in, sort of being in the same space, same kind of green room area as Jay Leno for a moment. Hopefully the goal one day is maybe I can be on the same lineup. Maybe we can actually kind of find time to like shake hands and meet. I mean, there are a few bodies in between us and comedians running around and things. But that was definitely very cool to sort of be a part of that space.
Absolutely. I can kind of imagine what it's like with a bunch of comedians all trying to get close to him. It must feel like, the guys on Bachelorette trying to get near the girl,
Oh yeah,
It's
definitely.
hard to get in there and get your time with him, right?
Yeah, it's I mean, I wouldn't know like what the best way to go about it is, but it's it's so funny thinking about in retrospect. It's like I either act way too cool, like cooler than I actually am, or I freak out and get starstruck. It's never this balance. It's never the the right in between amount of kind of enthusiasm. It's either overdone or just not not where it needs to be. So yeah,
Yes.
hopefully I'll figure it out over time. So.
And you were saying that when your parents tell you that about a comedian, that's when you perk up. So it sounds like your parents understand comedy and have an appreciation for comedians that have come before us.
Yeah, they do. I think that my parents, so they moved here in the 80s to do their postdoctoral training. They're both PhD trained scientists
Wow.
from India. And I think that a big part of their adjusting to living in the US was essentially going to see shows, movies, performing arts shows, some stand up. I think that early on, the type of entertainment they would consume, it would maybe have to be, I think stand up can get really nitty gritty in like the details of like highly sophisticated jokes. That may be a little tricky to kind of communicate to them, but they definitely are aware. I think especially with comedians that have gone into film, that or TV, like late night on the big networks, that's sort of a good kind of common ground for sort of me and my parents to enjoy like the same kind of content.
Wonderful. My parents came over from Germany and they loved sitting around watching comedy. So I wonder if it has a way of acclimatizing someone to a new environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I think comedy really sheds light on unspoken rules. Even for me, I mean, growing up, I started comedy. I turned 27 like 4 days after that first open mic. So I technically started comedy at 26, more so 27. But I think up to that point, like, especially my early 20s were tied up in like graduate school and just a whole lot of studying. I did some like socializing on weekends, but I think not as much as like as much as a typical 20-something-year-old should. And so there, like I feel like comedy has helped me grow just by understanding like social norms. And I would understand like social norms by understanding like specific jokes and sort of the context behind the setup before you even get to the punchline relies on sort of a mutually understood assumption. And some of those assumptions I just kind of missed in my early 20s just from like studying so much and pretty often maybe just being tied up in school and even my first job and before college. I wasn't really allowed to go out much at all in high school or grade school. So college was a very big culture shock of just the level of independence. And I think comedy, stand-up comedy, like has helped me understand the norms of like how people socialize and how people go out to dinner and certain expressions and idioms and certain sayings. So comedy has helped me grow as well. I think in similar ways, the way my parents adjusted by consuming like going to the movies and watching late night and stuff like that. So
Absolutely. You're just a gem to interview. I'd like to give you time to cover anything you would like to cover. And then when you're done, it can be anything about comedy or your life that you'd like to cover. It can be jokes, it can be about your life, it can be inspirational for those watching, how to be better viewers of comedy, how to be better comedians, how to be better humans, can be anything. And then when you're done with saying whatever you want, then we're going to talk about where you're going to be performing and how people can follow you. So would you like to take the floor and just say anything you want to people here at the end of this interview time?
absolutely. I think, yeah, I thank you for this like really awesome space to kind of just let my thoughts unfold. I think that today, something that I've been coming to terms with is that stand-up comedy in New York, there are many open mics, a lot of opportunities for stage time. And I think there's so much so that you or I, in this case, like I often get burnt out, physically. My mind and body can only take so much. And so I think getting to know yourself and prioritizing your own health and well-being. Comedy is a marathon, I think, as we all know, but we don't necessarily have to sprint, nor can we sprint that entire marathon. So I take breaks from hitting the stage open mics to maybe write at home a little bit. And if I'm having writer's block, then I might do some drawing, some sketch, some like cartoons, and just let my mind and body kind of let loose a little bit. My roommate and I, we exercise together, we do yoga together, we cook recipes. He has his friends and his sort of like a doctor circle, so we might go out to dinner. So I think taking breaks is a great way to recharge and kind of. I think comedians, you shouldn't feel guilty about just living life. I mean, at the end of the day, our set, our performance, all of it has to be relatable to some extent, and sometimes just living life as a non-comic human being is a great way to do that. So I think don't be afraid to take breaks out there. It's okay to recharge. That's what I would say.
Absolutely. That's great advice. I know people 30, 40 years into the business that haven't said that. That's amazing that you caught on to that at a relatively young stage in your comedy career. That's fabulous, because now you're set up to succeed and not burn out.
Yes, thank you.
You have to pace yourself. It's so true. So what I'd like to have you cover now, because we're getting near the end here, is that I'd like you to tell people, where are you going to be? Are you performing on Zoom, live, what shows? You can even throw in where you'd like to perform. If you drive, how far will you go? Sometimes bookers and agents are on here. If you're looking for an agent, if you want to meet Russell Peters, say, hey, if anybody knows Russell Peters, tell him I want to meet him. Whatever you want to say about what you want to accomplish in the near future with your comedy.
Absolutely. So my next show is this coming Wednesday for the Boston Comedy Festival. I'll be going to the Boston area Tuesday, and my show will be Wednesday. The ticket link is my pinned post on my Facebook profile. It's also the link in my Instagram bio and Twitter as well. So that's the Boston Comedy Festival. It'll be night 3 this Wednesday, 7 or 7:30. That's sort of the next big show I'm gearing up for right now. I'm very excited. This will be my first time performing in the Boston area. And also my social media is I like to Mudit on Instagram and Twitter. So it's a fun social media name. I'm also on YouTube, youtube.com/Mudit Verma. It's all one line, simply youtube.com/my first and last name, which is Mudit Verma. And in terms of where I'd like to perform, I have some shows set up or one that I can think of in New York in December that I will advertise very shortly. I'll be in Boston from this Tuesday to Saturday for that comedy festival. I am open to traveling, folks. I'm in a fortunate position where I can travel. I've been performing. I was just in Maryland this past Monday, visiting home and doing a show in Columbia, Maryland. And the week prior in College Park, Maryland, where I went to college. So I'm very open to traveling. I've driven as far as from Maryland to, I think, like Central or Southern Virginia, just to do open mics. So I'm very open to learn about what spots are out there. I'm happy to take them on. I would love to meet any seasoned comedian and very open to learn and pursue these opportunities.
You're such a doll. You're such a bright spot in sometimes a very dark business.
Yeah.
And you're willing to sacrifice. There's so many comedians that have come before you who have sacrificed so much time and money and effort, and you're just willing to jump in, but you also know you need to pace yourself. So you're going to go a long ways. And you were in the Burbank Festival, the Boston, you did a residency at Broadway Comedy. You've done the best clubs in New York City. Oh my gosh. Awesome. Way to go. Keep going.
Thank you so much, Lynn. That means a lot. Thank you.
And every once in a while, reach around and help somebody younger than you behind you too. Don't forget, giving out helps you. So yeah. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I'll
Thank
post
you, Linda.
this, and you're just very impressive. Thank you so much, Mudit. Mudit Verma, everybody. Follow him.
Thank you.
Say hello to your parents, because they did a great job.
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.